All right, guys, we are going to talk about how you are gridding your 12 by 18 because unlike your wolf drawing, you have to grid this at every inch and a half. So these are not whole numbers. We are now dealing with the whole number and the half inch. So you have your long mark here that indicates the whole number. You have the slightly shorter mark here that indicates the half. Remember, your half is going to be the one in between the marks, not the numbers. Okay? I have these 18-inch rulers. They are up in the bucket towards the front of my class by the TV screen. Get them when you're ready. So just like we did with the wolf, you have to measure twice in order to draw a single straight line. So I'm going to line the 0. See how my ruler is going over the page? I'm lining the 0 up here. And just like before, I'm going to be making all of my marks parallel in the same direction as my actual measure lines. So we're measuring every inch and a half. So when you do that math, 1, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, 1 and a half plus 1 and a half. And you have to add both of these pieces. So a half plus a half, you have half a pizza and you add another half of a pizza. You have a whole pizza. Yay, you. Okay, so there's a whole number here. So that turns into a whole number. And then a whole number plus a whole number, 1 plus 1 is 2. Now, this is not 21. You have to add those pieces together. This would be like saying 1 and a half and 1 and a half. So we're going to add these pieces together. 1 and a half plus 1 and a half is 3. Then we're going to add another 1 and a half to that. So 3 plus 1 and a half. I don't have 2 halves to add. So my half just drops down. 3 plus 1 is 4. So it's 4 and a half. You have to do this for this entire part. If you are struggling with that math, get with me so I can help you. Okay? All of this needs to disappear. Whee! I'll make it disappear better later. Anyhow, line your ruler up to the end of the paper. The 0 at the end, not the end of the ruler because that is not the same. Have it roughly going all the way across. If it's off a little bit, it's not going to change the measurements enough to cause a problem. If it's off a lot, this is a different story. Get it roughly in the right location. And we're going to measure at 1 and a half. 1 and a half plus 1 and a half is 3 because we just did the math. Plus 1 and a half is now 4 and a half. Plus 3 or plus 1 and a half is 6. And then 7 and a half. You're going to have to sit down and do the math before you do this. I am old and I have good habits. 10 and a half. 12, 13 and a half, 15, 16 and a half, and then the last measurement will be at 18, which is the end of the paper. Slide that ruler down. It does not have to be all the way to the end of the paper, but, you know, far away, at least a hand span away. Lining the 0 up to the mark, 1 and a half, 3, the exact same measurement. So if you want to do the math and have all of your numbers written down, you can clear that with me, and I can tell you whether or not you did your math right. 12, 13 and a half, 15, 16 and a half. And we'll have measurements on the top and bottom. Remember, do not go along the ruler. Do not make little circle marks. Make a tiny little dash that goes in the same direction as the measurement line. Now, if you don't want to try to line this thing up, you don't have to for the short side. You will need it when we're doing the other measures. You can use a different ruler. You can use a regular 12-inch because this is 12 inches tall. Line up both dots, draw a line going all the way down. You're going to do that for every one of them. Remember, just like I said with the wolf, if the line does not touch both dots and you measured your dots correctly, the dots aren't the thing that's wrong, the line is. Erase the line and do it again. I can tell, I know you guys don't believe me until I catch you, I can tell when you erase the dot and put it on your inaccurate line. The line has to be right. Just like with the wolf, for this to work properly, you have to have the whole grid correct. If your grid is not correct, it's going to screw up the rest of your drawing. This is just the first step. Okay? So this is checkpoint 1 on this project. This is a separate grade, And because of previous issues, we have an actual due date where I will collect this checkpoint from everyone at the exact same time. So you need to make sure that you get this done ASAP. Now, so we have all these lines. All of my lines are touching both dots. I'm a little bit off here, but it's really close, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. If I'm off by like 1/8 of an inch, that's a whole other story. Now we're going to do this magical little trick called rotate. It's perfect. Because I'm on the shorter side, I can actually use the 12-inch ruler to do these measurements. I still have to do every 1.5 inches. Do not put your marks on this line, because if any of your marks end up close to these dash points, you're going to confuse yourself. Put it in between, okay? I've got my 0 lined up to the edge of the paper. You can see my ruler is hanging off just a little bit. And just like before, I'm rolling the paper up so I don't smush it. Just like before, I'm measuring every 1.5 inches. So 1.5 and 3, 4.5 and 6, 7.5 and 9. Some of you guys will start to recognize the pattern that's actually going on here, but I'm not going to tell it to you. You have to figure it out yourself. Okay, so I have my little dots. I'm going to come all the way down to the other end. It doesn't have to be all the way down, but you want it down towards the other side. Lining up at the 0, 1.5 and 3, 4.5 and 6, 7.5 and 9, 10.5, and then the end of the paper. Eyeball this, guys. If it doesn't look like these dashes are about the same distance apart, double check your measurements. You may have measured the wrong area on the ruler. The half mark will be the next longest mark. So I'm going to rotate this paper again because now I have to use my 18-inch ruler. I'm going to line up both dots. Covered it up. I was wondering where it went. I got to line up both dots. Now I've got them on the bottom of the ruler right now, so this is going to be a really awkward handhold. Ugh, so weird. Doesn't feel comfortable. Just like before, guys, your hand needs to be spread wide apart. You need to apply pressure. If you notice that you're having an issue as far as getting the things to line up because you're having an awkward handhold and all this stuff, rotate the page. I'm doing this for the camera so everything's on the camera. Hold my pencil at the end, draw it through. My line goes through both dots. It's a little bit off, teensy tiny tad bit off. Not world-ending enough, okay? And you're going to do that all the way down. I would really prefer to rotate this, but you know what? I'm going to start from the bottom. I think that's going to be easier. See how I adjust? It's amazing. Line up both dots. Make sure your ruler is good all the way from one side to the other because you have to do the entire paper. Line up both dots. Draw your line. Yoink. Line up both dots. You don't have to add these sound effects, guys. Seriously. Because if I have all 25 to 30 of you guys making the sound effects, we're all going to go crazy. Put them together. I've got eraser scum all over this page. Line up my dots. I can't actually see the dots. I'm kind of guessing a little bit here. So I'll draw a little bit lighter, so if I have to adjust, it's easier to erase. Ah, nailed it. If you need to, put your pencil on the dot and use it to pivot to the other. And then draw your line. See if that worked. I'll do it on this one too. Put my pencil on my mark, put the ruler on it, and then I can pivot just the one side to line that up and draw my line. That way I end up with a 12 by 18 grid with every mark at 1.5 inches. So that should give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. By 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 grid. So we are looking at a 12 by 8 grid. Your 4 by 6 will be the exact same way. So you need to measure every 1.5 inches. You will end up with a 12 by 8 grid. And then you need to measure every 1/2 inch. And you will end up on a 12 by 8 grid. 12 by 18 paper. These numbers can be confusing because they are similar. 4 by 6 photo. But both of them should be a 12 by 8. If you don't have a 12 by 8 by the time you are done, you probably need to do it again. Remember, you got to check it with me. Get working.